So Anna is the Chief Division of Sleep Neurology at Cornell, and I'm so honored that she's going to be here tonight to talk about, we started with the wellness of communication, we are going to finish with the wellness of sleep. And again, these are all things which are very much part of the science of wellness. Anna, thank you so much for being here, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Metzo, for inviting me to be here today. This is really amazing. I'm really mesmerized with all the information that I've learned. I've always wanted to be a good runner, so maybe now I'll kind of get going with that. Maybe it will help me sleep, right? So today we're going to talk about sleep, and it's fascinating to see because it's unavoidable, right? You turn on the television, medias, news, blogs, everybody's talking about sleep. So suddenly we almost woke up to sleep, right? It's fascinating to see because there's so much evolution, so much more knowledge about sleep, and at the same time is this huge paradox. We know very little, and we're just digging to get more information. So often people ask us very complex or very simple questions, and we never really know the right answer. Even simple questions is, how much sleep do I need? Like, well, it depends. Depends on your genetics, it depends on what you do, depends on how much your brain capacity you use, how much your physical energy you're using, the time of the day, the meals you've eaten, the season, how much light exposure, it can go on and on, right? So I'm gonna try today to just simplify a few of the things that I know and try to see if I can help you understand how to help yourself in improving your own sleep at home. This is a fact we all know. We are sleep deprived, so that's something that is unavoidable. We cannot argue with this. We've seen that over time, the adult population in the US has been sleeping less and less. And really, going back to the question, how much sleep do we need? We definitely know that it's really not less than 6 hours. Maybe there is 1 in every 1,000 people that may need less than 6 hours of sleep, but it's really not the average population. It's really not 70 million people. And this is back in 2015. We also can see that from the eastern border of the US, we can see the percentage of people that are sleeping less than 7 hours now dispersed throughout the country. The darker colors have populations of people that in about 50% of them sleep less than 7 hours. Somehow many of them are around us, right? How many people in here sleep less than 6, 7 hours in average? Look at that, and you guys are all athletes, right? So you need your sleep. We do a lot of work with athletes that do professional work, and really this is something that we try to ingrain into them, how important exercise is. It's part of the healing, how important sleep is. It's part of the healing process, because during the night when you are sleeping, you're recycling energy. It's really a magnificent process during the night, because we can't explain it very well, but we know that there's a lot of energy that we consume during the day that gets rebuilt. Your ATP gets rebuilt when you sleep. So when you ask people about the quality of sleep, besides what you spoke about duration, most of the people are really unhappy with their quality of sleep. So even if people said, yes, I do sleep 8 hours, they might not be very happy. So the National Sleep Foundation has been tracking this data, and we can see even back in 2012, over half of the population said that they might not be sleeping very well on a regular basis. And there could be reasons for this. So this is a chart just to tell you the prevalence of sleep problems. Insomnia is really a big one. And we know that insomnia has really a higher prevalence in metropolitan areas and among women. So there is some data pointing that women in places like New York City, Mexico City, and other very large metropolitan areas may be reaching about a 50% prevalence of insomnia in women. Isn't that crazy? So we need to figure out what can we do to empower and improve our sleep. Sleep apnea comes tagging along, more prevalent in men, and a lot more prevalent nowadays because as society, we have changed our body mass index, right? You can see the accepted norm average weight has really gone up over the years. And if you imagine our airway being almost like the tire in your car, if you add a lot of load in your car, the tire will flatten. You need to figure out how to keep that open. So that's a load that sometimes you're not prepared to handle. And during the night, as you're relaxed, your airway tends to close down. So snoring is a big symptom, I would say, of sleep apnea, although not everybody that snores has sleep apnea. And we also have restless legs, some periodic movements at night, Athletes might be at a higher chance or higher risk of having this because if you're running dehydrate, if your electrolytes are really off balance, people may have more cramps, and any increased activity in your muscles at night may fragment your sleep, and again, cutting down on the quality of the rest you have. So this has been, for many years, considered the two key elements of your sleep. How much do you sleep and how well do you sleep? So what I want to introduce today to you is a concept that I've been working for about 20 years in sleep medicine. To me, it's so amazing to see that this is coming to the forefront, which is really timing. So timing basically is how regular is your schedule? Are you going to sleep on the time that your body is prepared to sleep? We always know we have people that are morning, like larks people, and people that are night owls, and that can be a genetic basis for this. And it's so amazing to be here talking to you about this at Rockefeller because the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2017 was given to 3 researchers that do sleep science. Isn't that amazing? Who knew that? From here, who knew about that Nobel Prize? Isn't that amazing? I wish we had publicized more because they were looking into biological clocks, so this internal clock that we all have. And a great honor is to see Dr. Michael Young in here to the right. He's a Rockefeller researcher. He's a scientist. We were in this podium a few years ago talking about this. So what they were being able to do over 4 decades of research is just trying to understand that we function in a cycle. So here if we see, this is almost your cycle of sleep over a 2-day course. So the peak is the peak of sleepiness, which is intrinsically related. So now if you look into sleep, often we would say, oh, it's a passive phenomena. It's totally wrong. It's a very, very active phenomena. It's an active process of inhibition of all the cortical activity. So the brain is actually very active in trying to maintain that inhibition so you're not connected to the outside world. So it comes in a cycle. It comes in waves, and we can see that, let's say this is a person, let's say this is one cycle of sleep. We all feel perhaps a little bit tired in the afternoon where that siesta time may occur. And then we go into the second day. So when you talk about your optimal performance, we always need to take in consideration the time of the day. Because let's say when you deal with athletes that they travel through different time zones to compete, 7 a.m. in New York is not going to be the 7 a.m. in Russia or in Milan. We need to figure out how do we adjust that. And the other problem that happens is that we as a general population, we mess up with this a lot, right? People then decide to go to bed much later, and then they catch up. They go to bed early to catch up the next day. So look what happens with the hormones. We have these hormones in here that they are supposed to be released in synchrony, depending on where your sleep cycle is. Early in the night, you release more of the growth hormone, start releasing melatonin as the sun goes down. Melatonin peaks in the middle of the night. Now, cortisol level is what almost wakes you up. You feel all alert in the morning when your cortisol level peaks. But it's very easy for us to just mess up the cycle. So this is something that I think we all have the power to improve. So again, we might not have full control over the quality or the duration of our sleep, but I think the timing of sleep is something that easily we can work on. Because this is an intrinsic rhythm. And once you identify your rhythm and you try to match your own schedule to what your body prefers, sometimes it could even be a career choice. We've had people that we made advice in the office and say, well, listen, maybe being a journalist that you need to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, if you're really a night owl, may not be the best fit for you. So we have to figure out how to do this. So the picture of the brain is in here just to show you how the eyes are now taking the input from the outside, particularly light. Light comes into the brain, and we have sitting in here 20,000 specialized cells that we call them pacemakers. That's all they do. They keep track of time. Like by now, without checking your clock, you would know how long you've been in this room. Same thing happens during the night. Your neurons are keeping track of time. So they generate those oscillatory changes that work in your brain. They work in your cells. I can take your liver cell, we can take your skin cell, and identify that same cycle. So it sounds like magic, and that's how our body functions. So we have to be respectful of that as well. So one of the issues we see with modern society is artificial light, right? I know I'm not going to sleep well because I have that bright light shining on me tonight. So I go home, I need to stay in total darkness to allow my own melatonin to kick in. So look what is happening. If you look at a picture of the sky at night, we are able to map out all the countries, and we can identify all the large cities in there, right? Look into our country now. Can you see New York there? Right, a total bright sky. The other day I flew into New York City, it was almost midnight. It was so bright, I had to look outside the window to see what's happening. And it was just, we're flying over Times Square. It's just impressive, the amount of light we're exposed to. Again, this is amazing in terms of modern society. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to be smart about using this and protecting us from our own flashlights at night, right? Who would use a flashlight towards your face or your eyes at night? We often do that. So we have to be very mindful that nighttime is really not for a personal use of light devices. There are ways that you can change the light, not just the brightness, but the light. And let's see if this would show, sorry. This is supposed to show you what we have in there is just when you look into the full spectrum of light, the blue spectrum is the one that those cells are more sensitized to. And a lot of the electronic devices, because they know we can see that very crisp and well, are focused on the blue light spectrum. So we're just talking a minute ago about blue light blockers. So there are goggles that you can wear. I wear glasses on top of those or not that would just change the color scheme, and they filter out this specific frequency of the light, which is usually the high 400s, low 500s nanometers, which tends to be the bluish and the green light, and allow your own melatonin to be secreted, because all this excessive light will really block and send the brain the signal that perk up, it's morning, right? Because we have been on this planet for so long that we have not adapted to artificial light yet. And sometimes people ask me, how long would it take? Next year, will I be adapted? Probably not, maybe 5 generations down the road. We don't know, we've been here for so long, so we adapted to a natural process, and now we're being, very keen at messing up. So we have to be careful. And that brings us to my ABC of sleep, which I would say, first step is that you need to accept. You have no control over your sleep. It's a natural process. It has to happen. So don't try to be nitpicking about your sleep. Embrace it, understand where your rhythm is supposed to lay, and try to maximize the sleep that you can get. And behave. So in terms of bedtime habits, it's very important for us to know when you go home tonight, just try to be quiet and try to avoid a lot of light exposure. You can talk to people, but avoid aggravating conversations at night, because then you're going to have, right? So sometimes patients of mine that are older, I have so many patients that are 90, 100 years old, and they say, oh, my kids are in California. And like, at what time do they call you? Oh, they call me at night. Like, don't answer the phone. You call them at 7 a.m., right? So you have to be mindful, and those are strategies that we all have to use in how to preserve our own sleep. And try to chill out in terms of relaxation activities at night. Even if it's just a few minutes. It may sound silly, sometimes I do that. If I get home late and it's getting close into my bedtime, I can sit in the dark for a few minutes. I've scared my husband before, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just chilling out, I'm just trying to relax. Like, he's such a good sleeper. None of this applies to him probably because he sleeps at any point. But for me, since I was a kid, I knew I needed to preserve my own sleep. So with this note, I want to thank you so much for having me again today. It was a pleasure.